Okay. Okay, let me share my screen.
How are you, Marcella? Hi,
I'm
Marcella.
doing good. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Maybe we
Okay.
can mute the panelists,
Sure. Let's see.
except for me.
Let's see who. Can everybody go on mute, please? Okay. Welcome to the City Club webinar for April. Our featured speaker tonight is Jim Folsom, and this webinar is being recorded, and attendees may ask questions via the Q&A button on the bottom of your Zoom, and enjoy our program. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our club president, Mr. Kelly Ryan. Take it away.
All right. Welcome, everybody. I'm glad you're with us again for another exciting evening of baseball. Oh, that might be something else. I think we got a pretty good program for you tonight. I'd like to actually to talk about a few things before we get started. The first, I want to thank everybody that participated in our City Club poll about when we're going to reopen. It looks like the general consensus is that September is when most of you will feel comfortable operating again in public, as long as we follow the guidelines that are in place at that time. And so that's our every level best intent, assuming that things continue to trend in the direction that they're currently trending. As more and more of us get vaccinated and there's fewer community transmissions, I think we'll be in a good place. Hopefully it'll be an indoor event, but if it's not, we'll find some location, maybe outdoors on the San Marino High School football field. We'll find something, because I know you're getting tired of these webinars, just like I am. Also, if you're new to a meeting of the City Club, because this is the first of 2 free meetings that we're offering, welcome. And we'd like to really know who you are. So one way that you can do that is if you can just drop your name into the chat, so somebody from the membership committee can follow up with you if you're interested in the programs that we offer. And tonight, honestly, we've got a great one with a very knowledgeable expert, Jim Folsom. I think you're going to enjoy that. And then I got a couple of business things I got to take care of. As you know, the City Club every year elects new officers. I fortunately am the current president. I am looking very forward to being the past president. And as part of that process, we form a nominating committee. And if you are interested in serving in the nominating committee, please contact either myself or Stephen Choi, who's not with us tonight because there's a competing school board meeting, far less interesting than this meeting is going to be. But if you contact Stephen Choi or Susan Jakubowski or Jim Tripodis, they can hook you up with membership information. And I'll tell you at the end, in fact, where you can just click and join. But I like to keep mystery about City Club. And then finally, I've got an announcement. East Meets West is holding an event to begin a conversation about bias in our community. 2 of us, Isaac Hung and myself, are going to moderate that. That's on May 2nd at 2 p.m. We're going to send out some more information. It's about time we began a conversation about things that are going on in our city. So if you got comments on that, email me, hunt me down on the street, say hi, all those good things. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim, who's going to give us the flag salute.
Please put your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Awesome. And so I'd like to introduce Calvin Lowe, who will introduce our first guest. Calvin.
All right. So our first guest is Maggie Lee, the president of Chinese Club, and she's
Nope.
Wait.
First,
Nope. But it was, see, we're just keeping everything interesting. Our first guest is a doctor.
Let me see. Well,
Got her head up.
well, you have to take over that from me now because I didn't
Okay.
actually.
I'll help you out. So our first guest is someone that everybody should know, because I certainly do. I talk to her all the time, and we all want to look good on camera. She looks great on camera. It is Dr. Marcella Marlowe, who's going to give us the city update. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. I am always happy to be confused with Maggie. That is a high compliment, and I accept it, Calvin. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here tonight. As always, I love being here with City Club. I did attend that first coffee chat, and it was fantastic. I really appreciate it. I can't wait for the next one. So thanks for doing those. It's definitely interacting in a different format. I was asked to come here tonight specifically to address the city's plans for the 4th of July. I want to talk a little bit about 4th of July, and then I also want to talk a little bit about the world opening up a little bit more on the city side. I must start my 4th of July update with an apology. I do not have a concrete plan to share today. I hoped that I would. I was really trying hard to meet our April 20th deadline, but we're getting close. So I just want to share with you some of the things that we're thinking about, and promise Kelly and the rest of City Club that as soon as we have some final details, I will send an email that can be sent out to the membership so everybody is informed about what we're doing. I know this is a big question for people, and I'm sorry to not have a more final answer for you tonight. Part of what we're struggling with is the world is probably going to look very different in 2 months, and we don't necessarily know what exactly that means. What we know now are some of the restrictions that will be in place if we're going to have an event. Because we knew about some of those things, I actually sent off an update to the city council about a month and a half ago, telling them that I didn't think we'd be able to have a 4th of July event this year, and kind of listed out all of the reasons why it didn't seem like it was going to happen. But we know the world keeps opening up, and so we're really trying to figure out any way to do whatever we can do. So no decision is final yet, but I just want to share with you a little bit of what we're challenged by. The first thing that we're challenged by is that to do our normal 4th of July event, we really should have started 2.5 months ago. And so we're very late in the game, which really takes quite a lot of work. A lot of vendors are not available. To plan an event as our 4th of July event is in a short period of time is actually quite difficult. We also have a strange circumstance this year that the 4th of July falls on a Sunday, which means that the holiday will legally be observed on the Monday. And so we wonder how many of you will be traveling for that long weekend now that the world is opening up a little bit. So we're not sure how many people will really even be in town for the event. All of the protocols also are going to mandate some pretty significant physical distancing and mask requirements. And to be honest with you, staff is a little concerned about being put in the position of having to enforce those rules, which is never fun. And we also, of course, don't want to not enforce the rules. So we're struggling a little bit with what that would look like. And finally, just this week, we got the sad news that the Blacksmith Run is going to be virtual again this year. So they're not even going to try to do it live. And also the parade that we've come to know and love will also not be happening again this year. So those are two kind of traditional complements to our 4th of July event that will not be happening, which will again make the event look a lot different if we are even able to do anything. The bottom line is that based on the guidelines, the event would be very different if we were going to run it. The park would be closed all day until the event. There'd be no putting a blanket down early. We would probably only have it open for maybe 6 to 10 p.m. at most. The attendance would have to be significantly capped, probably at about 3,000 people max, which is a significant reduction from what we normally have at the event. I'm sorry to report that the City Club Pavilion would not be permitted to occur. I know, believe me, I've loved the City Club, City Club Pavilion. Pre-registration would be required, no on-site tickets. People would need to stay in their own marked off square. Seating would be assigned. There really are quite a lot of different things from what we would normally do. And with the completely truncated attendance cap and the very different event, we're just trying to figure out if it's worth the cost to the city and the staff resources to put an event like that together, which means, of course, we won't be able to do a lot of other things. So stay tuned. I'm so sorry that I don't have a final answer for you. We're trying to figure out if there's any way that we can do that event at all. If there is, you guys will be the first to know. And if there isn't, you all have heard firsthand what some of the challenges are with making it happen. And if we aren't able to do it, then certainly we will go next year with gusto. But I want to leave on a high note. So I do just want to say that our Community Services Director, Brian Haworth, who hopefully some of you have had a chance to start getting to know, he's been with us for about 6 months now, has had lots of great ideas for programming, and he's got lots of great ideas for how we can start opening the library up. We know that we've been getting a lot of questions on that. And don't worry, Kelly, I'm almost done. I promise. The issue that we have with the library opening right now is that we have staff working over there so that we can maintain our social distancing. So we can't really move them back until the people that are fully vaccinated are fully vaccinated. And that's probably about a month and a half away. But then we're going to start reopening the library. But in the meantime, this is the high note that I'm going to leave you guys on. Brian has been putting together some great ideas for outdoor programming at the library, even maybe some ways that outside you can touch the books and browse through them yourselves for what you might want. So he's working on reopening in different and unusual ways so that we can get back to serving you as soon as we can. So thank you so much as always. If you have any ideas, suggestions, or thoughts, please don't hesitate to email me, City Manager Office, all one word, at cityofsanmarino.org. And I certainly welcome any feedback. So thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you, City Club, and good to be here.
Awesome. Thanks again, Marcella. I always appreciate the update. I am looking forward to a July 4th type event. It may not be the one that I want, though. So I'll look for the update. Anyway, at this time, I'd like to introduce Lauren Kleinrock, who's going to talk about our first City Club coffee.
There you go. I take it serious when I say mute. Thank you, Kelly. We started this coffee. It's an idea that I actually took a friend of mine who's part of Kiwanis up in Washington, and they've been doing this for a while once the pandemic started. And they have a lot smaller group than we have, but they just have a once a month coffee clutch, if you will. It's meant to replace kind of when you couldn't go out and get together with friends and just casually talk and about whatever you wanted to talk about. So even though our last talk was entitled City Talk, which was kind of nice between City Club and then the city itself, it's not meant to be totally information thrown at you. It's meant to be essentially a chance for you to talk, discuss, be informal. You will get answers to things. You can ask questions of the people that are there, but you can also just communicate with people that otherwise you don't want to get up that early to go out. It's not, what time is it, Hunter? I can't remember, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, something that's in the morning anyway. And
9 to 10.
What is it?
9 to 10.
9 to 10. Okay, so it's an hour, and it's just made to have a good time, really, and have some very casual conversation with no strings attached. So we're hoping to draw people that are just club members, or heck, they could even be non-club members for that matter, but just another opportunity to get together and do some things. And Kelly was sure I couldn't finish under 4 minutes, but basically I'm done. We'd love to see you join us and make this thing bigger and better.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren. And just for the rest of you, we're planning on holding them the second Tuesday of the month for every month except for August, because in August, apparently nobody wants coffee. That's what I was told. That's what I'm scripted to say. Anyway, we're moving right along, and Calvin and Kylie were fighting over the introduction to Maggie, but it's Kylie who gets the win this time. So Kylie, if you'll introduce our next speaker.
Hi, I'm very happy to introduce Maggie Lee. She is the president of the Chinese Club of San Marino, and she is here to promote our annual Mid-Autumn Festival event. And also, she is in charge of part of the organization that's under her is also the Chinese School of San Marino. So I'm going to present Miss Maggie Lee.
Maggie's currently muted. Hunter, can you unmute?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, there
Yeah,
you go.
go.
it's okay. Good
we
evening,
got you, Maggie.
everybody. It's my honor to be here. It's okay, right?
Yep, I
Yep.
can hear you.
Okay. I want to thank Kelly Ryan, Isaac Hong, and Kelvin Law for welcoming the Chinese Club here tonight. I'm very excited to be speaking to everyone, and I hope the City Club and the Chinese Club can continue to collaborate in the future. We prepared a 9-minute video, so I'm not sure the video is that ready.
Yeah, let me open it up and
Okay, thank you. So that make it easier for us.
can you
Thanks, Maggie.
hold
Got it.
on a second. Let me see how. Okay, I'm gonna.
I also invite my the whole board member to be here tonight.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll enjoy the show, but I think they've already seen the video.
Okay, let me see how this. Let me see if this works.
This is the great thing about Zoom is we just by the seat of our pants, we're trying to figure out, it'll all work out.
Let's see.
Don't worry, Jim, you're controlling your own screen. It'll be great.
Oh boy. Can you see this?
Yes,
Yep.
but
how much
I'm not
can
sure
you
the sizes.
Let me see. Okay.
There we go.
Okay, I'm gonna play it.
This is Maggie Lee, the current president of the Chinese Club of San Marino.
We just need some sound.
Okay.
Together with my colleagues, Yang Chen, Bruce, Lopato, and Yang
We don't want to miss Maggie, so we can back it up a little bit.
to stop her crimes and the ongoing activities. CCSN has established the
I'm actually fascinated by this at this point.
singular vision of being a civic group to promote and support culture, arts, and sponsor educational programs for the benefit of the residents and students who are interested in learning Chinese language, arts, and culture. What's more, CCSN is
Not sure why the sound's not working.
for a better communication, respect, and appreciation among all
It's a slide, but do you have it on speaker view?
carry out our missions. CCSN has been tireless raising funds and then distributing them.
Don't worry, folks, we're working through the technical difficulties.
Yeah, I'm not sure why we don't have any sound.
Well, maybe we, while you work on that, Maggie, can I ask you a few questions about Mid-Autumn Festival? So, well, Hunter's
Yes,
got with that. What's going on this year for Mid-Autumn
This
Festival?
year, can you? I cannot see myself. Okay, that's fine. Okay, this year, the date is November 13th, Saturday night. We book St. Gabriel Sheraton already. People ask us if they want to meet together. So, yeah.
So it's in the same
That's
place
on
as it
November
always is, at the Sheraton?
Same place, not Sheraton, yes. Same place like 2019, 18. Yeah, same place.
And where can City Club members get tickets if they want to attend?
Just contact Chinese Club. We can help on that.
Okay, and then I know that you guys are as part of the Chinese Club's mission, you've had a renovation. Can you describe the renovation of the club?
Yes, the renovation, it's, I will ask my board member. Oh, okay. Is that possible? Johnson can say a few words?
Can you promote
Johnson
Johnson?
Xiong, no? Yeah, this project, he handled the renovation project, so he know all the details.
Okay.
Is Johnson on?
Johnson,
Do you hear anything now?
Nope.
oh, you want to do the next speaker so we can help on the technical, or we just grab
do you
our
have,
ribbon?
Maggie, do you have the video? Can you share your screen?
If you need it, I can ask Joanne to help on that. I don't
Okay,
have
so-
video on my hand.
All right,
Okay.
so what we'll do is we'll
Let
come
me,
back
let me,
at the end of the presentation because I think it's important we show it. But we're going to move on here for a few minutes while we fix the technical difficulties. And so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Isaac, who is going to introduce our featured speaker.
Okay, Kelly. Actually, would you like to update the membership directory first?
I'm going to do that at the end. So let's.
Okay, good. All right, then let's get on to the more exciting part of this program. Our speaker tonight need not much of an introduction. Jim Folsom is synonymous to the Huntington Botanical Gardens. But did you know that Jim was born in Eufaula, Alabama? Now, I took a quick Google map tour of Eufaula, Alabama. That's a beautiful town by the river and the lakes. Now I see why Jim constantly pursue natural beauties and capture wonderful scene through his camera lenses. Now, Jim received his BS degree in botany from Auburn University. And then he pursued his master degree in biology from Vanderbilt University, and finally received his PhD in botany from the University of Texas at Austin. Jim came to Huntington Botanical Gardens in 1984 as an assistant curator. Within the next 7 years, Jim became director of the Huntington Botanical Gardens for nearly 20 years. Every time I see Jim, he's always enthusiastic and passionate about the project he's working on at the Huntington. Even though Jim retired from his position at the Huntington Gardens, he will never retire from his lifelong passion for natural beauties and cultural experiences. So let's give Jim a big San Marino City Club welcome. Jim, it's yours.
Ready? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm gonna steal the screen.
Yes, please.
Okay. So is that all visible? Can people see what we're doing?
I
Yes,
can.
Jim.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So Isaac asked me to speak a bit on my own history at Huntington, but I think contextually my history is part of the ongoing legacy of the Huntington. And I want to stress the fact that the Huntington is tightly tied to San Marino and to the Pasadena area. So much that's happened at the Huntington really relates to the context in which we found ourselves. And in fact, I think the Huntington is really blessed to be in such an incredible community, embedded in such an incredible community. So let's go ahead and here's Henry. I gave a talk back in the fall about just a more lightweight talk to the Huntington fellows about just some sort of random topics. And I took that and I thought, well, that was kind of fun. I will not make it so random, but I took that talk and expanded it. I've got a lot of pictures to show you. So we're going to rush through. So it's just from topic to topic. And one of the topics that I discovered as part of working at the Huntington was there's a real relationship between the Huntington, of course, and many different cultures. But if you go into the art gallery, you'll see this terracotta statue, and you'll see that this dryad has a wreath of a crown of laurel. Of course, you all know that laurel is associated with many different aspects of celebration or recognition. We get the term baccalaureate from the fact that Bacchus, the laurel berry, was something that people going to college, males going to college, carried in their pocket. When they graduated, they got a baccalaureate, and poet laureate comes from the laurel crown. So that had never, I sort of knew that, but it didn't dawn on me that was so embedded at Huntington. So we started working on the mausoleum. So here's Henry Huntington's mausoleum, built in starting about 1926 and designed by an Eastern architect, John Russell Pope. And up on one of the highest points. So here's an aerial photo from 1924, and that's the site that was chosen for the Huntington Mausoleum. Here's a picture showing it more recently, having been standing there since about 1926. Here's some pictures. We decided to re-landscape the entire area. So we've been working on it. And in part of that landscape effort, we realized that historically, what had happened was William Hertrick had actually planted a semicircle of laurel around the entire mausoleum, which we have restored. It's coming in as a hedge now. So it was kind of funny to discover that Hertrick had planted a crown of laurel around the mausoleum. And I don't think anybody ever knew that. Hertrick was busy. He was running Huntington's ranch. We still have 8 acres of oranges, and you probably wonder where the heck those oranges go. We give them to a food bank. So volunteers come, and even during the recent pandemic, we've had the office people come, and they harvest tens of thousands of pounds of oranges each year from the Huntington groves and give them out to food banks, distribute them for us. But we also have a small avocado grove. You might not know that. We have a historical collection of avocados. And the reason we maintain that is that William Hertrick, who started at the Huntington in 1905, planted the first commercial avocado grove in California. So avocado cultivation in California, which is a big deal, started at the Huntington in 1908. So we've put in a collection. We've restored the avocado groves. Here's Fuerte. That's the main cultivar we grew. Here's Haas. Zutano is one of my favorites. It's just beautiful and tasty. But we've also got two researchers who work almost full-time on avocado, trying to come up with ways to preserve them. And what we're concerned about is a disease that, so the reason for the connection here is not just the mausoleum, but the fact that avocados in the same plant family with laurel. That's Laurus nobilis. Avocado is Persea americana. There is a disease that is wiping out everything in the laurel family around the world. And that disease is not yet in California, but it's in Florida. So it will make its way. There's hardly any way to imagine it will not get to California. We are racing against time, trying to develop techniques to put the most important avocado cultivars in liquid nitrogen and protect them from loss, because it takes decades to develop a new avocado cultivar. And it would be a crucial crime for all of those to be lost in one pandemic of avocado, which is going to happen. It's going to happen in the next 20 or 30 years. So we're working on avocado because it's historically something that's important to us. I want to mention palms, and I chose the term resilient. Palms are tough. We're down at the southeastern coast where we've got our new home. And after the hurricanes, about all that's left are the palm trees. They are amazingly resilient, and they grow quickly. Here's a grove of palms that we planted about 25 years ago from 1-gallon containers. So if you want something to make a presence fast, go for palms. And the Huntington Palm Garden was established in 1905 because Mr. Huntington loved palms. They were among his favorite trees. And they're tough. Once again, this is a palm we moved. It's a great big palm called Chilean wine palm. And about 40, 50 years ago, we decided it was too close to the road. So we dug a box around it in Egyptian style. We dug a big hole. We just pushed it further from the road, and they guided up, and then a Santana came and the palm cracked because it was guy wired in those heavy winds, and everybody thought it wouldn't make it. But no, that palm could care less. It survived very well. Here's a palm we moved just last year. It was up by the Allen Gate, had that funny crook in it, and we just thought it was kind of fun and we wanted to keep it. So we moved it from up by the Allen Gate to near the art gallery. And when you move palms, you just tie the leaves up and leave them so they don't flop in the wind, because you don't typically guy them. We just planted this in the ground, and you can see it's pretty tall. We came in about 3 months later and trimmed all the wires of the rope away and any dead leaves, and it just perfectly recovered within about 6 months. So palms are tough. As I said, Huntington loved palms. He used palms a lot. Here are palms that were on the property when Huntington bought the property. These lined the road. You'll see this in a minute. They lined the original entrance to the Shorb Estate from San Marino Avenue. And so this is the only palm native to California, Washingtonia folifera, and they were growing healthfully on the property 120 years ago when Henry Huntington decided to purchase San Marino Ranch. So he loved palms and lined many streets with them. The entrance, this is one set of palms that used to line the road along the orange groves. This is the second set that currently lines that road. Here we have the North Vista. You see a set of palms here, and you see the second set. They decided they didn't like, or they needed a new set because these grow really fast and die or get problematic. So they planted a whole new set of palms. And that was the new set. This is a palm Livistona. And they were beautiful when I arrived, but they kept getting taller and taller, such that eventually they started leaning in on the North Vista. So just 2 years ago, we cut them all down. It was a sad thing. We took them all down. We planted all new palms up and down the North Vista, restored it, and now those palms are starting to make a nice showing. Now, we replaced the palms, and so that's the third set of palms that's been in the North Vista. In about 50 years, someone's going to have to replace them again. Now, we replaced them. We couldn't do the big deal because here we have the North Vista, which is supposed to be on straight axis with Huntington's home, but it's not, because they put the North Vista in, and then the home was built a few years later. And when the home was built, they decided to twist the home on its axis so they didn't have to take out some trees. So the North Vista is not perfectly aligned with the home. Here we have the there's the North Vista, and here's the Huntington home. And you can see that if you drew a straight line, a perfectly symmetrically perpendicular line from the home, it would not, in fact, it would be almost at what is our current heating plant. So because they twisted the axis of the home, both the North Vista and the Rose Garden are off, and we can't fix it. It's just permanently like that because too many things have been built since. Most people don't notice it. I think it's kind of part of the layered evolution of the property, just the fact that that's a little bit off. Now, I've dropped this in because right after we a few years after Deb and I moved to California, we were actually on the East Coast on vacation, and there was an earthquake of the Whittier Narrows earthquake. And the only thing we saw in the news from Pasadena was the crumbling of this wall. So during that earthquake, this painting, this phrase on what's called Hotel Carver in Pasadena, some of that brick caved away. And I was just thinking, Just Desserts. And the reason I titled this section Just Desserts is a lot of people write us about the desert garden and they misspell it. You know, desert is D-E-S-1-S-E-R-T and dessert is 2. But it's pretty common for us to get inquiries about the desert garden, calling it the dessert garden, which is kind of fun because it is sort of a dessert garden. It's full of just luscious plants. But I decided I'd look up this building. My people are the people of the dessert, said T.E. Lawrence, picking up his fork. And I looked it up and I found out, oh my gosh, that's a famous building. It actually was part of the Pacific Electric Railway. So during the time Huntington was building his estate, he probably owned this building. It was a depot. It was sold and became the Hotel Mikado. So during the time that we developed the gardens, then it was the Hotel Mikado, a Japanese-owned hotel. That was then sold in the 40s, and it became the first Black hotel in Pasadena for the Black audience, owned by a Black family. Then it was sold, and it became the Pasadena Repertory Theater, and it was the site for some really famous developments and productions, and eventually it became studios, and it was filled with artists, and one of the artists painted this phrase on there. So that's my introduction to the desert garden, which is sort of like a dessert of a garden. It's a buffet of over 5,000 different kinds of plants. It's the largest collection of succulent plants anywhere in the world, the most elaborate garden, 10 acres. So here we have some plants in the desert garden. When Mr. Huntington and William Hertrick decided to develop the desert garden, about 1906, 1907, the property extended over to San Marino Avenue. And so the desert garden was developed. Here's the art gallery. And if you come in through that Houston gate, and the desert garden was developed on that slope, and it was developed off into areas that aren't currently part of the property. So here's what happened. Around 1926, 1927, Huntington decided on this as the final outline for the estate. He owned this, which was part of his, this is the original purchase of San Marino Ranch. Eventually, of course, he owned almost all of San Marino and most of South Pass and half of Pasadena. But here we have what it boiled down to. That street did not exist. The year Huntington died, 1927, we were developing Oxford Road and Houston Road. They did not exist prior to that. This is San Marino Avenue. There was a train spur onto the property. And here's the entrance from San Marino Avenue that existed into the Shorb Estate. Here we go back to one of the original plot maps and the Huntington today. And you can see how tightly now the Huntington is surrounded by residential properties. So here we are again, looking at a more developed property, about 1924. And there's the desert garden. And you see that down here was a pond. What they did when Huntington sold off everything to the east of Oxford Road is they dug up all the desert garden, filled the pond, and put the desert garden to the bottom. So this is the current layout of the Huntington on top of that ancient aerial photo. And you can see the desert garden goes all the way down to Houston, and it fills in the entire corner where Houston and Oxford Road meet. We still can see in this photograph, I'll show you again in a second, we can still see the residue of those palms that lined that street. Here it is. So this is from the early 24 photo. And you can see those palms that I showed you earlier, there they are, that palm that exists today, the Washingtonia flifera, lining the entrance. And here we have that photo, and today you can still see that line of palms, the two lines. So the Huntington is a very layered landscape. There are a lot of things that you wouldn't probably plan in, but they are actually make the place more interesting because people have built on top of other people's ideas and visions. Because of that importance of those palms, we then decided to plant more Washingtonia fliferas up at the new entrance. So the EVC entrance is graced with a row of palms. So looking back at the desert garden now, here we have the early desert garden before it was moved. There's the Huntington Gallery having just built the mansion. And then the first creation of Mammillaria Hill was right after Huntington passed away. And all of that was in response to this letter. So after Huntington died, the trustees asked Frederick Law Olmsted's firm, the Olmsted brothers, to give them some thoughts on the Huntington landscape, on the garden. And they came back, and as you can see here, they were enthusiastically believing that the desert garden should become something, of course, they called it the cactus garden then. Clearly, the idea of developing on the grounds of your institution what should become not merely the most complete garden collection of cacti, but the chief world center of cactus study, botanically, economically, and otherwise, represents a much more serious. So there was a lot of thought about the importance of the collection. Because of that, we decided to list all of the plants in the collection. So we hired a botanist about 1930, and that fellow went out and made long lists of every plant in the garden, alphabetized them for the desert garden first, and started a number system. That number one, today we're about 150,000. That means we have listed sequentially over 150,000 different collections that have been brought to the property. You can see we keep track of what's living and what's dead. Number one is still alive. It's one of the few. As you flip through that old book, you'll see that there's a lot of plants gone. Here's William Hertrick. Later in life, when he hired and welcomed the second director of the gardens, that's Myron Kimnack. I'm the third. Myron hired me. So there have only been 3 directors. The 4th director, Nicole, starts next month, So the 4th director in the whole history of the garden starts next month. Here's Myron in the Desert Conservatory after his retirement. Here he is as a child. When he was a little boy, he started his own business. This was his business card that he wrote up, Cactus Bill. Here's just a host of some of the people who have been so important: Lauren Whitelock, Gary Lyons, Elmer Lawrence, Myron, people who have contributed so much to the growth of that garden over time. And the garden constantly changed. Here is a picture taken by William Hertrick in 1925 of one of thousands of cacti. We've moved from one point to another, and we're not through. We are currently rebuilding the entire north entrance to create wheelchair accessibility into the desert garden. Watch our progress. If you go down, you'll see that an entire new path system is being developed. We've closed off the top quarter of the garden, the north quarter of the garden, and we have completely landscaped in the paths. We're putting in all the infrastructure right now. So stay tuned. In about a year, you'll see an entirely new, beautiful entrance to the Huntington Desert Garden. Okay. About 20 years ago, we started 25 years ago. We decided that it was time to move the botanical staff out of trailers and out of temporary housing and to build a botanical center, which today is called the Francis Lasker Brody Botanical Center. And here's Francie right here. We opened the first buildings in 1997, and then we opened the main center in 2000. This opened to the public. The conservatory, which is the entrance to the complex, opened around 2005. It was completely based on Mr. Huntington's conservatory. So here is the lath house that used to be on the property, and the building that you see there, this building is the same footprint, the same dimensions, and similar in concept to Mr. Huntington's lath house. Here's the entrance. During construction of the landscape, many of you, most of you, I hope, have been in there. I'm not going to show you a lot of finished pictures. Here we are putting it together. It's full of, that's the first plant that went in. It's a beautiful tree today. The conservatory has been rather notable because the Huntington has become one of the important places where the famous Amorphophallus flowers. We've had probably over 10 flowerings since the first one, 20 years ago. So here it is rising, there it is in flower. We've studied it, we've pollinated it, we've passed out pollen and seed around the country. It's just a spectacular thing when it comes to the flower. The rest of the Botanical Center has also been incredibly useful. This is Banta Hall, named after June and Merle Banta, who live right across the street from Huntington. This is the Marge Richardson courtyard, and we use all these spaces all the time. Each year, the gardens hosts all of the Girl Scouts from San Marino for a day of study and field trips and a sing-along in the evening when they have pizza and have a kind of a ceremony here in front of the fireplace there in the Botanical Center. Part of the Botanical Center is the Children's Garden, which we developed. It opened on Father's Day in 2004. The Helen and Peter Bing Children's Garden. Those footprints are real footprints by 3 children. Johnny Rudin's grandson, my son Jimmy, and then the woman who is running the project, her son Gail. And so we actually got them to come and walk in the concrete. That was not so simple. The garden was patterned after many gardens. Here's the entrance door. The blue door is patterned, or is at least inspired by the door at the Mad Hatter's hat shop and the cups, the cups at Disneyland. This is the door at Disneyland. And the reason that we did the blue door was A, to provide a door for young children, but B, because the door at Disney doesn't open. And we stood there and watched scores of children go and try to open that door. And we thought, well, we're going to have a door in our children's garden that actually opens. Here's construction of that garden, the globe, the self-centered globe, we call it, the crawl through tunnel. There's Helen Bing testing out the rock chimes. Here's the artist who created all those features, Ned Kahn, later got a MacArthur. Some of the garden's governors out checking out the features during construction. And then the garden opened. It's currently, of course, not open. It's one of the many features that have been closed. The galleries have, let's see, they opened over the weekend. The Children's Garden and the Conservatory are still not open because there's so many things you actually touch and handle. It's all about touch. So here's the Children's Garden just before COVID. I mean, the opening to our new potager, our new vegetable garden, was the 28th of February last year. So we have never been able, we created an entirely new garden as part of the experimental garden. This is a public vegetable garden that we created and finished, ready to open on 28th February last year. The public has never seen it. It's right now in its 3rd crop of vegetables. It is a beautiful garden with a shade area under which we have many, many tropicals that we can display. The goal of the Botanical Center and this garden is to eventually display almost all of the food plants of the world, because believe it or not, the entire world subsists on only about 200 species of plants. Out of the 350, 400,000 different kinds of plants that are native to planet Earth, there are only about 200 that actually are the main food source for all the peoples on this planet. We've developed a lot of forms of those, but 200 species feed us. In 1908, Huntington built the Rose Garden. We have our fourth curator, Tom Caruth, and here's Ruth B. Shannon. The Shannons endowed Tom's position as curator of the Rose Garden. Tom is a famous hybridizer, and Tom's been with us he's been a volunteer for 40 years, but he's been with us for 20 years. In his earlier career, he introduced a lot of roses you may have in your own garden. For example, Julia Child is one of his. And 4th of July, the Huntington 100th, the new one, Cinco de Mayo. Here's 4th of July, the climbing version. That's his rose. That rose is one of the last ones that he hybridized that's being introduced, and we named it, we worked with Weeks Roses and named it Huntington's 100. That's a bed in the rose garden of roses associated with the Huntington, either introduced by the Huntington or named for the Huntington. If you want to see the roses, your own roses, we were driving through San Marino last week, and the roses are beautiful right now. And the Huntington's roses are exploding at this moment. So this is the time to go to the Huntington and check out the rose garden. But the peak bloom of the roses is very different from what it used to be, because Tom introduced a procedure that you might consider for your own garden. As the roses bud in, as they start developing buds, volunteers, and the whole garden is dependent on volunteers for many different things, go back and pinch back some of the rose buds, which forces the plant to set back and throw new branches, and it evens out the blooms. So instead of having one massive bloom from mid-April through mid-May, and then a quiet period, we have a more steady bloom. In fact, we have at the Huntington reasonably steady rose bloom all the way through to the point that we actually trim them back in January. I was there just this last week, and here were some of the roses blooming. As part of our work at the Huntington, we were rebuilding the orchid collection and, of course, building the conservatory. And we ran into an incredibly interesting couple. We ran into David Nax and his wife, Suki, but his previous wife, who died of cancer many years before, Mickey Nax, was famous for creating golden orchids. And they're not just dipped or plated. She would take live orchid flowers, cast them in plaster, and then burn them out, and then fill them with gold. And so she had created over her time a collection of hundreds and hundreds of gold orchids that she tooled down and made just beautiful. So the Mickey Nax collection was given to the garden. So we have, there's Suki. So we have the Nax collection. We just added a sculpture to the entrance to the Botanical Center that relates to that. This is the sculptor. His name is Kachik Kachatorian, and Kachik just created this remarkable 4x4 stainless and bronze sculpture, which you've not seen because that part of the garden is not yet open. But this is mounted at the entrance to where the gold orchids are. A gold-plated and stainless steel, that's gold-plated bronze and a stainless steel backdrop of 100 individually crafted Phalaenopsis. You've got to see this. It is a spectacular addition to the garden. Well, we have other gold orchids that are actually living. We have a wonderful collection of gold orchids, both on the property, but you might not know that the collection of orchids in the Thornton Conservatory off property, the Geneva and Chuck Thornton's house, their conservatory is filled with Huntington's we have two orchid collections, the one on the property, and then the one in this conservatory, which they allow us to host there, is a collection of the world's most awarded orchids. It is perhaps the most spectacular collection of orchids anywhere in the world of hybrid orchids. And it's just right here in San Marino. But orchids aren't new to us. There's William Hertrick with one of the founders of the American Cymbidium Society. So the American Cymbidium Society was founded in the living room of the very house in which I live, which is the house that was built for William Hertrick. So we've been involved in orchids and in cacti for many, many years. the relationships span the whole Huntington. So the Thornton Conservatory, we house the orchids in their conservatory, but the Thorntons also, Geneva was a board of trust. They got involved in the Restoration Art Gallery. And if you walk into the main art gallery now that it's open, the big room, the large gallery, is the Thornton Gallery now, because the Thorntons underwrote the complete restoration of that room when the art gallery was restored. Going to change topics here. Water is life. And I want to show you this slide I got from another speaker. This is the Earth. And if you took all the water on the Earth and put it in a sphere, that's about the size that sphere would be. And then if you took the potable water out of that sphere, then that is all of the potable. By potable, I mean not saline. That is all of the fresh water that is on this planet. So water is incredibly precious to us as humans, but us also as gardeners. And water is tough here in the West. In California, we have a long history of drought, and I think we're experiencing that right now. Here's a 2,000-year reconstruction of the history of California, and you can see California has gone through at least 2 mega droughts. By mega drought, we mean a drought that lasted like 100 years with just small amount of rainfall. So we have, it seems, at least to me, this ends in 2000. But I think if you looked at the last 20 years, I'd love to see this updated, you'd find that we've been in something of a drought. We've only had 2 years in the last 2 decades that were what we normally think of as average. So water is a precious thing, and it's especially precious right now. We get all of our water, you in San Marino, and we in Huntington get most all of our water from the perched Raymond Basin. Now that Cal American actually does buy water from the Colorado River, you might have noticed for the last 8 years that you have more calcium buildup on your shower than you used to, because the water in the basin is really low in dissolved salts, but the water from the Colorado River has a pretty good amount of salts. So this is the source, though, of almost all of our water. Certainly it's the source of all the irrigation water at the Huntington, because the Huntington has 3 kinds of water. It's not on this chart. We have fire water that we get from Pasadena. We have drinking water that we get from Cal American, and they pump it. And then we have irrigation water because we have 3 wells. We have the Buddy Moss well, the Roscoe Moss well, and the Canyon well. The Mosses actually grew up in San Marino, and their company dug the first 2 wells Huntington developed by hand. They were dug 450 feet deep by hand. One is the Canyon well. The second one is the closed and abandoned. We use it for measuring water depth. Orlando well here. This is the replacement, the George Buddy Moss well. This is what the system looks like here, the well pumps, the fire pumps, and then a backup electrical system in case of power failure to keep our water going. And here's the schema for the irrigation pipes on the property. We did a lot of study of water. Here's a study at one time a few years ago. These were the automated and all of the systems that were being irrigated in some way on the property in various ways. So we did a complete study. During that earlier drought a few years ago, we sat down and we decided to apportion our water rights to the garden. And you can see that one part of the garden gets very little, almost 0 water. Low water use is this green portion. Medium would be the orange groves, the Chinese garden, the Japanese garden, and intense high water is really the center of the Japanese garden, around the pond in the Chinese garden, the center of the Japanese garden, the rose garden, these areas, take in or require more water. But as part of that program, we actually also studied all of our lawns. So in this diagram, you can see all of the lawns at the Huntington and which ones are allowed to stay and which ones have gone to ground cover. So all of these 10 lawns were turned into either some kind of planting or ground cover. The lawn around the mausoleum was eliminated and turned, it's mulch in this picture, but it was actually turned into a shrub ground cover. And the light green areas, so we went from 18 acres of lawn to around 11 acres of lawn as part of a program. Just to take a pause for a second, take a seat. The Huntington is full of benches. There's several, maybe over 400 seats and benches out in the gardens. One of the most popular is this carved bench. It's been here since Huntington's time. Children love this. And they're just some gorgeous marble benches around here in the herb garden, this wrought iron bench, the exedra, which is up at the mausoleum. And then, of course, we dedicate benches. People give funds to an endowment. And as part of the recognition of that gift, we put the bench in the garden, and it can be there for 20 or 30 years, depending on how we work out the negotiation. There's a bench dedicated to David Zeidberg, who retired a few years ago. He was a member of the club. Our education director, Mickey Heidorf. Some of the benches we have crafted. This is a beautiful carved bench by a local artist, Yoshikawa. And we have other carved objects on the property. So if you go down by the Rose Garden at the top of the Japanese garden, you'll find that this fellow, Terry Egan, was busy for several years completely restoring the faux bois. If you go to the Huntington website, you'll find a 45-minute time-lapse program on how he did this, and interviews and explanation of this incredible sculpting work. Here's the underlying part that eventually was sculpted over. So go visit the Rose and the Japanese gardens, and you'll see all of those have been restored. They were falling apart when I first got here. And in fact, here they are before they were restored. Those concrete ones, the faux bois, were actually replacements for the first pergola, which were truly rustic, because in Europe, the tradition was you would use you would cut trees down, make them into these wooden pergolas, and the rustic part was watching them rot. And I think Mr. Huntington couldn't bear the idea of having rotting wood on the property, so he had his made in concrete. Terry got involved in another project, which was archaeological. We had heard when we went to restore the Japanese garden for its 100th anniversary in 2012, we had heard a lot of stories, staff stories, about the fact that the Japanese garden had once flooded. We always wondered what that meant, and we found out that maybe it didn't flood, or maybe it did, but we actually dug into the ponds to restore the ponds, and we found that there was, inside the ponds today, there were other ponds that had been abandoned and covered up by soil. So this is today's pond, but when we dug in, we found out that there was a pond, the ponds used to be larger at the top end. So we found another whole ring of pond around there. So that was the original pond, and then they decided to make the top pond smaller. So they built a new pond inside that. So we restored all that. We gently buried the old pond back after taking pictures. One thing we haven't yet restored thoroughly is the rockery in the South Canyon. So if you peek into the South Canyon, you'll see that there's this wonderful faux stone rockery that was original to the Huntington's time. So the Japanese garden, built in 1912, here's a letter that Hertrick sent to Henry Huntington. The Japanese garden is beginning to show some character. I can assure you that there is nothing like it in this country when I get it all complete. So the Japanese garden was built by purchasing a property with the Japanese house in Pasadena and moving everything to the Huntington, lock, stock, and barrel. And we hired a Mr. Huntington hired two Japanese families, but a Japanese carpenter named Mr. Kawai, and he built this temple bell gong, which Huntington had purchased the gong from a dealer, which is now brown. It's now ready for restoration. Here's Mr. Kawai with his family. Getting ready for the 2012 restoration. Here's Kelly Sutherland McLeod checking out some of the failing boards in the house. Here is Kelly and Mr. Nakamura from Japan. They were discussing what was going to be the final color of the house. And we found out there was a black layer that was original. So if you go to the Japanese house today, you'll see that we restored it with black pastry. So there's the house during restoration. Here it is at a point that was crucial, because during World War II, the Japanese garden was renamed. It was called the Oriental Garden, because I guess it was unpopular to have a Japanese garden. But by 1957, it was called the Japanese Garden again. And the reason it exists today is a group of women. This one is one of the most important to us, Mary B. Taylor Hunt. There she is at that time. Here she is. She lived right on Sierra Madre and San Marino Avenue, right here in San Marino. She lived there for decades. Mary B. and her group were crucial in saving the Japanese garden. So 1957, the Japanese house had been abandoned. It was closed. It was not open to the public. And the San Marino League took on the task of restoring the house, which they call a Japanese tea house. It's really a Japanese home. But anyway, so they took on the project. And if it weren't for the San Marino League and their involvement, the whole garden, I think, would have been lost. Here's a newspaper article from 1958 after restoration. Mary B. and two other officers, Mrs. Taylor and Mrs. Cushman. The Cushmans lived in San Marino. Mr. Cushman was the chairman of the first board of, we called it overseers, but the governors at that time. So Mrs. Cushman was involved. And here's Mary B. And that young lady is Mrs. Matsumoto. She was an early tea master. And so this is in 1958. When they were having tea ceremonies. Here is Mrs. Matsumoto about 4 years ago, back in the Japanese house after a restoration, once again, overseeing tea ceremonies. Here's Mary B. The Japanese tea house that has stood forlorn in the Oriental Gardens is now restored to all its gentle beauty. What is going on now at the Huntington, some of you know about, but some of you may be unaware that there is a construction project in play right now at the Huntington Gardens, and it relates to this. We call it the Japanese Heritage House, but it's the Yokoi Magistrate's House from Marugame, Japan. Here's the house in Japan just about 4 years ago. So this house is over 320 years old. 19 generations of the Yokoi family have lived in this house. We visited, a group of us, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, when the house was offered to the Huntington. We visited the house with historians and Nakamura, and there's Toshi Mosher, a San Marino resident. There's our landscape designer, Mr. Yamada. So we visited there. And we met with Adam Yokoi and his, saw their family shrine in the house, and Yoko Yokoi, who were the current owners of the house. The house was still intact, these ancient beams. We studied the house, met with just, I can't tell you how many different layers of experts. There's Nakamura, there's Toshi, there's Robert. I said, I used our landscape designer is Takamura. Okay, this is the outside. Here's the garden that wraps around the house. Every one of those stones in that garden was mapped and numbered, and every stone was removed. The entire house was dismantled, and the two treasure houses in the backyard There's the treasure house, inside the treasure house. There's Adam and a local temple craftsman from Alhambra who visited with us. Everything was taken out. The screens were taken to be restored. The stones were packed. All the objects were taken, clean, restored, and packed. The house was dismantled and then completely rebuilt inside a warehouse nearby. And here's the team, us visiting inspectors. Here's the team of carpenters, and there is the house in a huge warehouse near Matsu, about an hour's drive, 2 hours drive from Marugame. And here the house is completely put back together inside this warehouse. All of the beams are either restored or in a few cases, very few cases, replaced. So the house was restored. So the house was taken apart, moved to a warehouse, completely restored. Then it was taken apart again and put in containers and shipped to the US, arriving in the fall of 2019, or being shipped in 2019, all arriving in January 2020, getting ready for reconstruction. Of course, once again, COVID intervenes, and all of these materials have been sitting at the Huntington for more than a year, awaiting the moment. But in March, we finally got clearance, and the Japanese carpenters came over, and this picture was taken last week. So the Yokoi House, the magistrate's house, we call it the Japanese Heritage House, is under construction and will be finished this calendar year. When it's finished, it will be, I think, the only original Japanese house in the US from Japan in which people will be able to enter, walk in their stocking feet or in special shoes, walk on the mats and sit on the mats. It will, you might even claim, it will be the oldest house in California because it's over 320 years old. So just one more garden to talk about, to brag about or think about, the legacy of sweet fragrance, Liu Fang Yuan. This garden has changed the Huntington, and I hope has in many wonderful ways changed the conversation in Southern California. You're looking at, I believe, the most important Chinese garden outside Asia, outside China, and the only Chinese garden that has an intellectual program on which it's based and which surrounds it with a curator who is who's a researcher and with a staff of people who really pay attention to understanding. This garden, you've seen these slides before because I've given hundreds of talks on the Chinese garden. It's coming together, how it got built. American crews and crews from Suzhou coming together to build an earthquake, not proof, of course, but earthquake-ready structures that then are cloaked in traditional Chinese structure, the beautiful wall outside being built. We have two gardeners from China who are spectacular, skilled craftsmen. This is the head gardener of the Chinese garden, and he is also a punjing artist, and the punjing in the garden that you will see today came from his collection. Jun Li, the first curator of the Chinese garden, some of our workers and translators as we went through the process, objects back in China that now are in the garden, original drawings. All of that's been held and collected. The life of the garden goes on now. And the garden is, that's an early drawing, but the garden now is, everything we've designed has been installed. The garden is never finished. There's still more we'd like to do. There's still more structures that would come in the future. But for the time being, this garden now is complete. I just want to show you a couple of funny curiosities about the Huntington. I call it crop circles. Circles are important at the Huntington. Everywhere you go, there are circles. The mausoleum is a circle. The landscapes around the children's garden, the top of the dome of the Scott Gallery, the fountain. So the Huntington landscape is full of circles and mazes. You might not know this, but down at the bottom of the garden, there's a wonderful turf maze that was designed by Alex Champion about 20 years ago. And we also love certain original features. I say that this is the whole southern area of the garden is based on the river rock kind of structures that were famous in the the beer family, the garden in Pasadena. So we have continued that. We've added all these phrases, we've kept that, and we've moved the stone in memory of William Hertrick to that location. That's the artisan and his staff who did all of this work throughout that lower garden as we've expanded that. Another big project that's happened since 2014, we received a bequest from Lauren Whitelock of cycads, and we took this area around the art gallery. So this is what the southern face facade of the art gallery looked like in 2014 before we started this project. And this is what it looks like today. So we've completely re-landscaped around the art gallery because we had to incorporate this major collection of cycads. And they came from Lauren. And so we moved 2,000 plants from his property, over 600 large cycads. And there's Lauren and Eva in their garden in Eagle Rock. And here, Lauren wrote the most important book on cycads that still exists today, the cycads. Here's his garden above the sparklets plant in Eagle Rock. It was a spectacular garden. People around the world visited Lauren's garden. Here we are, our staff, visiting even before probably about the year 2002. And here is Fred Brandt, who lived at Huntington, and we've just chalked out the first terrace. So all of this lawn went away, and we've terraced all that in to create the landscape you see today. We can do that partly because we've been very successful in acquiring equipment, and we had a gift from Gene Yateman of $1 million worth of equipment 25 years ago, about 22 years ago. And he went out and bought, Gene ran Yateman Construction, and not Yateman, Yeager Construction. Gene went out and took $1 million and bought us the most magnificent equipment. But 25 years later, it's starting to fail. And equipment is really important to a garden. So what we have done is, when the Huntington asked me what they could do, what endowment perhaps we could put together that would be important to the garden and would bear my name, we decided to create an endowment for equipment purchase. So over 500 people have contributed to that endowment, and it's up to $2.5 million. We actually created two endowments, one for events and shows, and one for equipment. And so if you ever find yourself sitting on extra cash that you would like to go to help the garden, consider those two endowments, because those are critically important to the future of this huge endeavor, this landscape. So what's happening to me? Well, I'm not starting a junk house, but it almost feels like that, having moved now 1,000 boxes of ephemera of stuff from the Huntington house in which we've lived for 30 years. I realize I've done too much accumulating over the years, and my children don't want anything I have. So I'm not in the business of buying stuff anymore. We're moved to an island off near Apalachicola, Florida, full of ghost crabs. And that's our new home. We bought it in 2008. It sits above the ground 12 feet. Our second home is this 19-foot Airstream trailer, which we travel around in. And you don't know, we might show up in your backyard. We went and visited Isaac and Celia up at their incredible place near Tillamook, Oregon, and stayed at their campground. And Isaac showed us how you harvest clams. That was such a delightful time. And if you wonder what else I'll be doing, I'll be continuing to develop my website, which is called botanyincontext.com. And I'll be adding to or revising a free book on Apple Books called A Botanical Reader, which you can sign up for. It's just a free book. It's 1,000 pages of what I know and think about plants and what I've learned while being at the Huntington. So that is all. Let me stop sharing and getting you back to. Okay. I got
Awesome.
it.
And I think, Hunter, you've got a few questions, right? Or
Yes,
hand raises.
I have a hand raised. The last four numbers on the phone is 3506. So if you would like to ask your question, you are now able to talk. Are you still with us? Okay. Maybe they don't have a question anymore.
We must have lost them. There were 52 and 53 a minute ago. Now there's 52.
Although the hand's still raised, we did lose one. Okay. I don't think this person wants to talk.
Okay.
Okay. Well, let's
All right.
move on.
Jim, thank you very much. Isaac, what do you got to say? Since you know each other, you got on mute too.
All right. Thank you so much. It's always fascinating to see the pictures and your story. We hope that we will see you coming back and share with us more of your adventure. So in the meantime, the City Club will have a gift for the speaker, and it is in the making, and I will chase you down and then deliver the gift to you. In the meantime, we wish you the best, you and Deborah, for the best of your time at retirement. And I know you probably have more to share down the road with your new ventures.
Maybe you and I can do a program on Tillamook for them.
Absolutely. I think that will be a wonderful additions. Thank you again, Jim. So for the upcoming meeting in May, we will have Dr. Lena Richter. She's a San Marino curriculum instructions. She'll give us a 15 minutes update on the school districts. And our feature speaker next month is Jeffrey Prang. He is the Los Angeles County Assessor. He will be talking about Prop 19 and its impact to all of us who owns real estate properties. So that will be a very interesting, informative speaker for next month. For now, Kelly?
Perfect. And now for the big finish. We got some expert technical help. I know Joanne's on, and I'm going to give Calvin an opportunity to actually do what he wanted to do a second time so that we can get the screen sharing and we get everything working, because it's great. And before I ring off, Jim, thank you. I learned so much about botany, and I taught it for 20 years at San Gabriel High School, and I know none of what you know. So it was awesome. So take it away, Calvin.
All right, thank you. So now we have our technical expert, the secretary from Chinese Club, Joanne Chen, to help. Joanne.
I'm ready.
Okay, go ahead and share your screen, Joanne.
Good evening, Mr. Kelly Ryan, the president of City Club, and Mr. Jim Folsom, the keynote speaker. This is Maggie Lee, the current president of Chinese Club of San Marino. It is my great honor to participate in the meeting this evening together with my colleagues, Yang Chen, Bruce Lofaco, and Johnson Xiong. We will take about 10 minutes to introduce CCSN's mission, actions to stop hate crimes, and the ongoing activities. The CCSN has established since 1979 with a singular vision of being a civic league to promote and support Chinese culture, arts, and to sponsor educational programs for the benefits of the residents and students who are interested in learning Chinese language, arts, and culture. What's more, CCSN is commissioned to serve as a channel for better communication, respect, and appreciation among all ethnic groups in San Marino. In order to carry out our missions, CCSN has been tirelessly raising funds and distributing them for the support of the school system and the community, in which we take a great pride. Lastly, I will express my gratitude toward Mr. Ryans for his effort in organizing a safety group to prevent anti-Asian hate crimes in this much-needed time. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Young Cheng. I'm this year's VP at the Chinese Club of San Marino. This is my third year serving as a board member. I'm a longtime resident of San Marino, and I also have a son who attends high school, and he's a junior. One of the club's major focuses for the year is to have more involvement with the community and outreach between the Chinese community and with the city of San Marino and many of the champions of the city of San Marino. I'm heading a new committee called the Community Outreach Group, which is really focused on bridging communication between the Chinese Club and the key community groups such as the City Club, Rotary Club, Chamber of Commerce, as well as the various city organizations like the city's manager's office, police and fire departments, public works, school board, planning department, community service department, you name it. Through the years, Chinese Club has always been a very active donator of money to various organizations within the city. But this year, we really hope to be able to get even more involved with community outreach and really be a true bridge between the Chinese-speaking community and also the various city groups. So whether that be through communication or awareness seminars and things like that, we are looking to be more active participant to help bridge understanding between the various groups. So thank you for your time today. I look forward to meeting you all and also working with you this year. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Johnson Xiong. It is my pleasure to talk to the City Club. And I'm a board director and the chair of the activity committee. I'm responsible to organize various events. Normally we arrange about 60 events every year. And this year we've done many seminars like education, parenting, gardening, meeting with the city mayor. And also we're gonna coming up event for Stop Hate Asian Crimes. Besides the seminar, we also do workshop, like exercise workshop. We have yoga and also Zumba exercise class every week. Besides the workshop and seminars, we also have a forum, and we just did a forum for the school district to talking about the mentally and the financial situation of school district. Besides those activities, we also responsible for the library programs, and we host library program once a month on every second Wednesday morning from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. For a library program, we've been doing workshops like Chinese cuisine, Kung Fu, Tai Chi, and Mahjong, and so on. Because the pandemic this year, most of our event is using a Zoom to do the online activities. In 2019, we did a major renovation for our club facility, and our main hall can accommodate about 100 people, and you can do various conference, seminar, forum, workshop, or even a gathering party. We even have a new kitchen that is easy for a party and also can do the cooking class. And for our middle activity room and also the classroom can accommodate 20 people each. Our facilities are open to non-profit organizations, city, and schools in our community, and we only charge a minimum cleaning fee. So City Club is welcome to come to use our facility, and we're gonna offer one free usage for City Club, so which City Club can come to our facility and utilize our facility for your event. I'm going to show a video about our facility so you have a better understanding about facility. So now we're going to show the video. Thank you. Thank you for watching the video. Chinese Club is really looking forward to working together with City Club for some future events. Wish you have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
City Club of San Marino, it's an honor to get to speak to you all today. My name is Bruce Lafko. I'm this year's MAF chair. MAF stands for Mid-Autumn Festival. It's what we do once a year at Chinese Club of San Marino to raise as much funds as we can and get as much support as we can from everyone in multiple communities. We try to raise around $200,000 per year, and that way the following year our board can use at least half that money to donate to other groups in San Marino, other organizations, foundations, children's groups, and it's really all about helping our community. I've been lucky enough to have gone to 6 MAFs in the last 6 years, and I have such a great time. I think it's about bonding with the community, raising funds, auctioning off items, and trying to get as much money so we can help each other as a community. My name's Bruce Lafko, and if you guys ever need me or have any questions or want my help, in regards to MAF, I'd always be honored to help you guys in any way. Hopefully you guys can come out and join us and support us this year. It's in November of 2021 this year. And soon we'll come out with our theme and our dates and timing. Thank you so much, and it's an honor.
Awesome. I've attended a number of MAFs. I hope other City Club members can join in that as well. I want to thank the Chinese Club for attending this evening, and your board members and your technical expert Joanne, who managed to get things back on track. I also want to thank our main speaker, Jim Folsom. I greatly appreciate the time you spent with the club, and I speak on behalf of the board, I'm sure, that says that that's a wow presentation. As long as I've lived in this community and as a number of times I've visited the gardens, I was fascinated by the intersection of the botany and the plants with the layout and design of the facility. I thought that was great. To the rest of the City Club members, thank you for staying with us. I know that Zoom meetings are tough. I know that these meetings are not the same as when we can get back together. If you're interested in joining City Club and you've been listening to this presentation for the last hour and a half, I welcome you to click on the button that says how to join on sanmarinocityclub.org. That's our website. And again, thank you as always. And until next month, peace out.
Thank you all.